So before we create our position effects, there's a few settings we need to look at. And this is all to do with using the no base point option. First thing you're going to want to do is go to Edit and Live Properties. And you want to make sure Live is set from highest to standard. By default, Vista has its live priority as highest. So when you have something playing back from a queue, you can then grab stuff in live, make a new look, and then store it over the top of it. But this method means that because live is highest, if we start to try and use our presets in live, it can overwrite some of our queue lists that we're trying to play back from. So what we need to do is set the live priority to standard, so live works in tandem with our queue lists. The only thing you have to remember is because live is no longer highest, some things will react a little bit differently. If you have stuff that's playing from a queue list that has a higher priority, you might need to release that queue list rather than trying to turn them off or change them in live. It's just something to watch out for. But set this to standard, and that is the first step. Next thing we need to look at is creating another master queue list. So we're going to right click, go to create new queue list, call this one spot position effects master queue list. And the same as before, edit this, go to your programming screen. Next thing we need to look at is the queue list properties. In timing, make sure that for all of your position effect master queue lists, release is set to 0. This is because we need to put an extra command in our triggers that releases this queue list between every jump, because we need to make sure that it's using live as the base point for our effects, so we need to put an extra release in. If this is any higher than 0, it can mess with how this works. So we're going to hit OK on that. In fact, you can save this as default, so every queue list from now on will have a release timing of 0 seconds. Hit OK. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to live. This is where we're going to provide our base point for our no base point effects. If I quickly bring up my lights using my intensity queue list that I've already made, I will put them downstage. I will make a quick effect to show you. If I go to advanced now and don't use own base point, the effect will cancel on itself. The reason it's going to do this is because live is the source of this effect, so it's trying to look for a base point from somewhere else. Because we haven't given it any pan and tilt information from somewhere else, the effect cannot run. So what we're going to do is provide the base point in live, but then run the effect from the queue list. So in live, grab your lights and make sure you have a preset that contains both pan and tilt information. It needs both of these to run properly. In the last video, I showed you how to split up your presets to have just tilt and just pan information. But for this effect to work and this way of working, you need to have both pan and tilt information active in live. So as you can see, we have our position information playing back from live, and we're going to just record only our effect information in our queue list. So do not put any position information into the queue list. So with that being said, we can create our first queue. Now, the effects I'm going to put into this are exactly the same as the intensity ones. They're just placeholder effects. Do not think that this is the type of effect you necessarily need to use. Please come up with your own effects and your own designs. These are just examples. So I'm going to create a new effect, position. I'm going to make like a symmetrical circle type thing. So I'm going to make this a bit bigger. I'm going to reverse the odds down here. Because I've got kind of a mirrored selection going on, I'm going to give it a blocking of 2, and that way everything will become symmetrical. I'm going to give it a master, just like I did with my intensity effects. And then what I'm going to do is, because pan and tilt obviously have limitations, moving heads can only go so fast, I'm going to drop my speed using a rate multiplier here to quarter time. So even though this is actually only 60 BPM, I'm actually doing quarter time of 60 BPM. This means even though these have to move slower because it's pan and tilt, they are still technically in time with all of the timings in my console. Last thing I'm going to do is go to Advanced and then select Don't Use Own Base Point. And you see that this time it's worked. It hasn't cancelled itself out, because if we go to our timeline, you can see that this icon here means that the only thing that has been recorded into this is the effect. The base point it's revolving around is being supplied from live. It's coming from another source in the desk. So we're going to label this one now symmetrical circle. Then we're going to create a couple more just so we've got some stuff to play with later. So I'm going to create just a tilt effect now. So I'm just going to squish this circle, give it a bit more height, blocking of 2 as before, give it a position master, make it quarter time, and then don't use own base point again. Call this one symmetrical tilt. And then the last cue I'm going to make, squish the circle again, increase its width, reverse the odds, give it a blocking of 2, position master, quarter time, and don't use own base point, and call this one symmetrical pan. Okay, now we have all of our effects in. Obviously, you guys can make way more effects than this, but now we have our little example cue list in. We're going to go to our live tab and make sure you only do this in live. You never want to add anything else to this list apart from the effects. We can select our lights, and now we can start to use our presets to move these effects around. So I've got this pan wave going here, but now I can move it up. I can move it to the mid stage. I can move it so it revolves around our lead singer. I can put it back to wherever I want on stage. I can even make it pan out further or cross in or cross out using all of our position presets here. And this is why don't use own base point is so useful. It means that we can take any effect that we're running and with our presets provide the base point for it to move around and create a little bit more dynamic effects on the fly. So, with all that being said, we can now just stop this cue list and start creating our effects triggers. So we're going to go to our effects list page, and exactly the same as we did with our intensity effects, we're going to right click in our position effect command cue list quick picker and make sure in the settings that cue list selection has been selected to play is activated here, otherwise this won't work. Right click, create new cue list, and we're going to call this one symmetrical circle. Now the last kind of like special thing we need to do is with an extra command. Like I said, we're going to have to release this cue list in between each jump to effect, just so it grabs the base point from live every time. To do this, simply go to your insert commands, and the first thing you're going to do is release the effects master list. Then we are going to jump to our effect, and then we're going to release this button. And we're just going to spread these out. So we release the master list first, then we jump, then we release this button. We're going to save and quit this. And then if we go down here, if we change this to our all quick picker, we can start duplicating again as we did before, because all duplicates will end up here. And then simply drag and drop, right click, edit this. Now the first command, release the main list, that can stay. You don't need to worry about this. It's just these two. And that's exactly the same as we've done in our intensity triggers. All we're going to do is point it to the new Q that we want to trigger and release itself. Then we can close this, click it, and there we go. We've got our tilt. Then Control C, the label from this, and then paste it to the label of that. And now you can see we can now switch between our symmetrical circle to our tilt and back again. So let's do our last one. Let's duplicate this, drag it up here, edit it, jump it to our third Q, make sure we're releasing this button, close that, check it works, copy the label across, and now we have our 3 position effects, and obviously you can add as many of these as possible, all working nicely. Last thing we need to do is just add a stop effects for this. So we're going to just duplicate this again, drag this over here, right click, go to edit, and all this needs to do is release the main list. So we're just going to simply delete these. You can right click, hit delete, right click, hit delete, and we have a stop effects. So I'm just going to rename this one to kill spot position, and then close and save this. In fact, we still need to add our release to this. So let's go to insert command and make sure you release this button. This is just so it doesn't have it constantly playing back in the background, because once it's been pressed, we don't need it anymore. So just move that along a bit. Just check that works. So there you go, it releases itself. Save and close that. And then we can adjust. So we can actually close this list now. And we can adjust our quick pickers so everything lines up a little bit better. So there we go. So now we can go to our circle effect, change our minds to our pan effect, or stop it. And the nice thing is now that we can use this in conjunction with our intensity effects. So I can now go to my pan effect and have my in and out working with it. I can stop my position effect, keep my intensity going if I want, or start a new effect and put my spots back on. I can also go to my presets now, select my spots, and move this effect wherever I want it to go. Go back to my effects lists, change my effect, add a new dimmer effect to it. If I don't like where that's pointing, I can just go to my presets and I can move them mid-stage. So now you can see that just from creating a grid of buttons here that kind of jump all to your effects for you and kill all of your effects for you, you now have almost complete control over every attribute, over every effect, and then using your presets, you now have control over all of like the hard attributes like color and position and gobo. It becomes really easy to create looks extremely quickly. And if you ever want anything to stop, just select your stop buttons. Now there's a few other things we can do. We can create a kill all effects button, and all that does is we create it down here. Kill all effects. This is obviously extremely useful. Go to edit, go to timeline. All you need in this is a release command to all of your master Q lists. So obviously if you have a load of color lists and a load of beam lists and more intensity and position lists, all you do is add a release command to each one of these lists as you go. And then you just need to add a final release to itself. And then what we can do is we can close this, save it. And if we have like loads of stuff going, let's just move this up a bit. If we have loads of stuff going, we can just tap this and it'll stop all of our effects. And because we have autoplay on our faders here, we can then bring in our intensity straight away if we need to. Now, I'm going to show you another little thing we can do. So just as before, we can now go to our programming screen. Let's just clear everything out for now. We can select our spots in the same way they were programmed. So we go to groups and I use my mirror selection. Open our position effects, and like again, you can filter from here. Using Shift or the red modifier key, select all of our cues with all of the fixtures that are in those cues, and then go to Extracts, Position, and create a Position Effects extract, making sure that position is indeed checked. Hit OK. Then we can close this list out because we don't need it. Create a new list. Select our washes in the same kind of mirrored way. And then go to our extracts. Go to position. And then merge that in. And now we've created those three effects for our washes as well. And can we label them? So we can call this one Sim O, Tilt, and Symmetrical Pan. And just as we did before, we can now close this list, call it Wash, Position, Effects, Master, Q list. Hit save. Go to our effects lists. And then we can just drag that to our master effects list. Quick picker down here. Select our triggers. Duplicate all three of them. Drag them up here. Place them underneath or wherever you want. We can then give our washes some intensity. Use our preset to bring them downstage. Again, our pan and tilt. Make sure you have a preset that has both pan and tilt to start all of this off. We'll zoom them in a bit as well. Just make it easier to see. Go to our effects lists. I'm going to open our wash effects list just so we can see all this working, and we can copy the labels like we did before. And then right click, edit this, go to your timeline. We're going to want to change the release, the first release, to our wash. Hit OK. Change our jump from our spot to our wash. First Q. And then our last one to our copy of Q. Then we can close that and test it. And there we go. We've not only saved time by copying all this across, we've also got our triggers copied across as well. And all you have to do is update some of these commands. And then what we can do is literally copy the label as well. Hit OK. And then just do that for the next lot of commands. Make sure everything's now pointing towards our wash position queue list. So release it first, edit, go to our second queue, and the release goes to the button. Close this, test it, wonderful, copy that, paste it here. I'm going to put symmetrical before it as well, just so it matches up. Last one, edit this. Edit this to here. And then edit the release to this button. Close that, test it, wonderful. Copy, paste it here, and then the last things we have to do is we can close this list now. Duplicate this. Quickly just bring that in from our all. There we go. Edit it in our timeline, and we want to release the spot, the wash master list, and release itself. And then we can close this. So now let's just again reorganize this so it all kind of works. It all lines up nicely. Once you have it all lined up where you want it to be, simply update your snapshot by holding Control or yellow and updating it. And now, as you can see, we have our washes doing exactly the same and in kind of no time at all. So all you have to do is spend some time on the first list, and then your second, third, fourth lists become a breeze using extracts and then just copying these commands. And there you go. We can start them. We can stop them. We can add our intensity effects to these as well. And just like before, we can also go to our washes and use our wash presets to change how these look and these move. So the very last thing that we're going to look at is basically release by types. So now that we've got some intensity and some position effects going, and we have a kill everything, now we can add in things like kill just intensity effects or kill all position effects. And it's as simple as just making another queue. So we'll right click here, go to create new queue list, call kill all intensity, edit it, go to our timeline, insert a command, and all this is going to do is release all the intensity master lists. So it's going to release the intensity master for our spots, and it's going to release the intensity master for our washes, and then it's going to release itself. Close this, close and save this. Then we're going to do exactly the same for our position as well. So I'm going to create one here, right click, create new list, kill all position, edit it, go to my timeline, and simply release all the position masters. And again, this is another really good reason to put things into queue lists, because the target lists are really easy to find. So we're going to kill the position master here, kill the wash position master, and then release itself. Then we can close this, save and release. Just readjust things as you need to. Very good. Update our snapshot. And now we can kind of show this kind of all working. So if I kill everything, release everything, clear everything, what I can do is on my console, I can bring up my spots and my washes. I can set a BPM for my effects. I can now go to my presets, select my spots and washes, select 5 seconds live time, bring them downstage. I can then turn them blue, select my spots, zoom them in, add a gobo, fan them out, turn them white. Cool. Now go to my effects lists. Now I've got everything set up here. Obviously you would add color and beam and gobo and anything else that you want. I've just done intensity and position because everything else will react like an intensity effect. Position is the only one we have to do some extra special things. So color and beam you can program the same way you have as your intensity, except for intensity you would have color or beam information. And now we've got a nice looking stage. We can simply start using effects with them. And you can play around with using size masters and speed masters to make these bigger and smaller. You just assign them exactly the same way as you do a rate master. You just go to the effect and add a size master to it. And then we can add our tilt for those as well. While that's going on, I can select my washes, make them yellow over 5 seconds, zoom them all the way in, maybe fan them out as well. Go to my spots, take the gobo out of that. Go back to my effects, maybe do in and out for both of them. Maybe do pan for both of them. So as you can see, everything is synced up. Everything is really quick to get to. And at any point I want to stop something, I can stop just my spots or turn them off. Or I can have them come on with an effect. Or I can stop all of my position effects. Or I can stop everything. But when I bring my faders up, I haven't had to clear live. So all of my presets and my positions and everything still remain. This is the kind of like the last and final bonus to putting things into queue lists, that it's separate from live. So you have kind of 2 layers to work with. You don't have to clear live and lose all of your nice positions and all of your nice colors where you left them. And the nice thing about this as well is you can take the intensity out and effectively change the look underneath and then bring it back in again to whatever your new look is. And then from here, again, just start adding some effects to it. Now, obviously, this is a very, very simple and quick kind of way of doing this. I expect that you guys will go ahead and fill these pages completely with triggers. And you can have all kinds of release triggers here. And you can also have triggers that will trigger nice combinations that you like. So if you want your fixtures to be panning and then using the in and out, because that looks quite nice, you can set up a trigger that triggers all of these for you. So there's lots of layers that you can add to this, but this is the basic principle behind how I like to control effects. I link everything to effects masters here, so I can speed it up or slow it down. Same with my position, speed it up or slow it down. You can also add size masters to this to make your position effects get bigger or smaller. But the principle of creating this kind of thing is exactly the same. And like I said, you've got a nice layout for your presets. You then have a nice layout for your effects. Everything works in the same kind of workflow, and you can just keep adding and adding and adding to it. I would suggest, obviously, putting these over to kind of like 2 screens. I'm just using one so I can show you here, but having say, your effects on one screen and your presets on another. Makes it even quicker. So yeah, go ahead, try this out, play with it, change it to make it what you want. Obviously, trying to teach people busking setups is quite hard because everything is, based on personal preference. So don't feel that you have to set everything up the way I've set it up. Change the way all these are, put them into different boxes, etc. But this is the basic principle behind how I like to busk with effects. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Any questions, leave in the comments, put on the Facebook group, go to the forum, and anything that I haven't explained very well, please let me know and I'll try and clear it up in the comments. See you in the next video.